Hey guys, Hidden Truths here. Welcome to this new video with a bunch of new stories. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers and I think we can do it with your help. So please subscribe. It would honestly mean a lot to me. Now, let's get right into the stories.
Late summer light draped Golden Gate Park in painterly gold, as though the sun itself had rolled a fresh sheet of Kodachrome across the sky just for the afternoon. I drifted beneath arching eucalyptus, the air ragged with incense smoke and distant guitar, and tried to decide whether the bright noise of peace could really share oxygen with the jungle ghosts folded inside my ears. Tie-dye blankets bloomed across the lawn like oversaturated lilies. Vendors hawked macrame and miracle brownies. Posters of Che and Dylan flapped against lampposts sticky with wheat paste. I counted 4 medics on roller skates, 2 dogs wrapped in beaded collars, and 1 elderly man handing daisies to anyone who would take them. Every time a drum circle hit its low-skin heartbeat, rotor blades returned, invisible but exact, and the hairs on my arms stiffened at attention. Easy sketch, I told myself, gripping the leather cover of the notebook that had followed me from quinyon, rice paddies to this riot of color. A young woman painted in sunbeam freckles twirled past, leaving a slipstream of patchouli. "Welcome home, brother," she sang, though I had never met her. I offered what passed for a smile. It felt borrowed. Near the conservatory of flowers, I paused to pencil a quick curve of the glass roof. Lines soothed me, small fences around chaotic color. A barefoot guitarist perched on a retaining wall caught my sketch in mid-birth. She set her Gibson aside and hopped down, skirts swirling like smoke from a signal flare. "That jacket could use blossoms," she announced, fingers already uncapping a marker loaded with indigo ink. My olive-drab field coat, bleached by equatorial sun and city laundromats, suddenly seemed a blank treaty awaiting amendment. "It's federal property," I muttered. She grinned, teeth bright as surf. "So's the moon. And people plant flags there." She lifted my sleeve without permission, but with such lightness I didn't flinch. Petal outlines unfurled under her marker, quick as hummingbird wings. "Name's Willow Starling," she said. Eyes the blue of motel pool water. I told her mine, Sam Donovan, but she shook her head until copper hair slapped her shoulders. "Sketch," she corrected, pointing at the notebook. The nickname from boot camp tasted different in her mouth, less sarcasm, more prophecy. When the flower filled, she stepped back, assessing her work the way a medic studies a healed scar. "Tonight, we play music on Turk Street rooftops," she declared. "Bring that harmonica in your pocket." My hand, traitor, patted the denim hiding the little honer and found it indeed there. "I haven't played in months," I said. She shrugged, guitar already swung into place. "Strings forget, lungs remember." Then she vaulted the wall, riffing a bright progression that chased my helicopter ghosts into tree shadows. I watched her until crowds swallowed the last glint of mahogany wood. The flower on my sleeve smelled faintly of alcohol ink, a newborn scent overlaid on musty canvas. Around me, protesters hoisted placards. "Make love not war, bring them home." I wanted to holler that half of me was still out there, kneeling in elephant grass, pinning air support coordinates to the sky, but the other half feared they already knew. Instead I sketched. The sag of one veteran's poncho liner repurposed as protest banner. The shimmer of soap bubble rainbows drifting above toddlers who had never heard an M60. My pencil danced until dusk rolled cobalt over the park, and the drum circle packed up for the Fillmore. City traffic on Fell Street mimicked the low thrum of C-47 engines. I closed the notebook before charcoal smears turned those Volkswagen vans into gunships. Willow's invitation pulsed in memory like a shoreline beacon. All warmth, no demand. I weighed options: head to the boarding house room that smelled of bleach and loneliness, or chase the music before courage evaporated. A payphone booth near the tennis courts offered its silver ribs. I dialed the operator, fed a coin, and left a message at my aunt's. "Running late, don't lock the gate." The receiver trembled against my ear. Jungle humidity seemed to leak from its perforations. When I emerged, Haight Street glittered with neon lotus blooms advertising head shops and hash cafes. The air tasted of spent matches and coming rain. Turk Street lay 7 blocks south, each intersection another checkpoint of memories I tried to disarm. The clap of backfiring buses, kids tripping over discarded newspapers, a skinny poet reciting Ginsberg to a parking meter. I followed the graffiti arrows Willow had chalked earlier, tiny birds pointing skyward, until a narrow staircase presented itself between a pawn shop and a vacant storefront. Candle glow flickered at the top like quarantine lamps on a hospital ward. I inhaled, caught the faint metallic note of my harmonica beneath cotton shirt, and climbed. On the final riser, city noise fell away, replaced by the hush of rooftop tar cooling under night air. Candlelight revealed Willow seated on a rug, guitar across her knees, a half-dozen strangers encircled sharing wine from a chipped enamel mug. She looked up, smile rounding her cheeks, and patted the spot beside her. My pulse synced to the gentle strum of her open chord tuning. Breathe, I told myself, stepping into the ring of light. Listen for strings, not blades. The city exhaled around us, and for a heartbeat, the only jungle was the tangled promise in her song. The mug reached my hands. Smoke of cheap sandalwood drifted skyward. I raised the drink, unsure whether I toasted arrival or escape. Below, traffic hissed like distant monsoon rain. But for the first time in months, I tasted something uncanned by rations. Possibility. And somewhere inside that possibility, rotor beats began to slow. The rooftop stretched like a cracked obsidian plate beneath the night, rimmed in mismatched bottles that stood in for battlements against the city's roar. Candles sheltered inside coffee tins pooled waxy light across rugs scavenged from thrift shops. Their patterns, Persian reds, Navajo blues, breathed new stories over tar paper still warm from daylight. Someone passed a jug of Gallo, the wine tasting of orchard dust and faint aluminum, and laughter drifted upward in loose spirals that tangled with fog. I accepted the jug, feeling each sip settle deeper than rations ever reached, while Willow tuned her guitar to the hush between car horns below. She began with simple chords, gentle, open shapes that lingered like handshakes you don't want to release, and the circle leaned closer, faces brightened by flame flicker. Her voice emerged soft, unforced, carrying that lilt certain canyon winds learn at dusk. Each note floated across my skin, warm at first, then unexpectedly cold as they ricocheted off the walls I'd built overseas. The melody wound upward, minor, then major, until its pulse matched the rotor cadence I'd memorized in bivouac nights. Whoop, 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 angels made of metal overhead. My knuckles tightened around the jug. For a breath, the candles flickered green, the color of cockpit console lights. I shook my head, but memory had already marched in. Night sky over Tam Key, tracer rounds carving constellations nobody wished on. Willow's eyes flicked open, meeting mine through the smoke coil. She must have seen the jungle ghost crowding my posture because her strumming softened into a lullaby that felt older than war. Lyrics floated, something about a river carrying sorrow to sea, and though the words should have soothed, they slid inside the rotor beat, echoing it in uncanny harmony. I set the wine down before my grip betrayed the tremor. Not here, not in front of them. Yet the lullaby drew me helplessly. It spiraled like a tourniquet around panic, slowing the pulse without stopping it, convincing the heart it could unlearn explosions. When the last chord faded, candles hissed in the wind, and silence spread wide as the Pacific. Willow placed her guitar aside, shuffled across the rug until her knee brushed mine. No one spoke. Unspoken vows of respect hovered in the circle. She offered a chipped mug of water, and I drank, the cold cutting through vineyard sweetness. Tram lines of city streetlights below formed a landing strip illusion, orange beads disappearing into fog. I inhaled carefully. "Is that song yours?" I asked, voice low, managed. She nodded. Comes when the street noise grows teeth, she said, tracing a daisy on my sleeve with her finger, ink catching candlelight. Helps file them down. I let the finger's path settle my breathing. Around us, conversations rekindled, politics of draft cards, rumors of a new Crosby record, yet our small hush held. I thumbed the edge of my harmonica, its metal cool. I heard choppers in it, I admitted, almost whispering, afraid naming them might summon their thunder. Willow's gaze didn't flinch. I wondered if you would, she replied, as though discussing weather. I told her that sleep arrived only when the ceiling fan in my rented room spun fast enough to mimic Huey blades. That silence felt like ambush ground where something always snapped first. Words spilled, low and uneven. How the smell of diesel in city buses twisted my gut. How sudden fireworks last month sent me crawling under a diner counter before I could think. She listened without tilt of judgment, palms open on her knees, candle glow kissing freckles across her shoulders. When I finally exhaled, the night felt fractionally lighter. A distant siren moaned along Market Street, harmonizing with foghorn bellows threading the bay. Willow lifted the guitar again, adjusted the capo higher, and invited me with a nod to join. I unsheathed the honer, lips finding the old brass reeds. First breath squeaked, embarrassingly raw, but the second carried steady, weaving a minor harmony around her chords. Wind teased the flames, casting our shadows across laundry lines like tall, thin soldiers learning to dance. The circle clapped, soft rhythm on jean thighs, shoes tapping tar, and for several minutes music became an open room without doors, where nothing hunted. When the final note sighed into fog, someone checked a pocket watch scavenged from an army surplus stall. "Midnight," he announced, and conversation shifted toward tomorrow's promise, an exodus to Big Sur in a borrowed Volkswagen bus, dawn departure. Surf, bonfire, maybe a charity gig at Henry Miller Library. Willow looked at me, question bright behind her tired smile. "Ocean rewrites dreams," she said. "Come rinse the jungle off." I thought of the boarding house cot, the fan's dull imitation of flight, and the static-filled news broadcast waiting to remind me the war hadn't ended just because I left it. The rooftop amplified heartbeats in that pause. "Go," whispered a reckless part of me. "Stay prepared," countered the sergeant, still training in muscle fibers. In the street below, a delivery truck backfired. A crisp pop, and my shoulders jerked before reason caught up. Willow's hand found mine, anchoring the twitch. Her thumb brushed scar tissue. I rarely noticed anymore, mapping it like Braille. "Road leaves at 6, she murmured. Candles guttered. A cold breeze signaled night's tipping point. I pocketed the harmonica, uncertain whether I was shelving bravery or storing it. The circle dismantled, sharing hugs that smelled of clove cigarettes and candle smoke. As we descended the stairwell, Willow pressed a daisy sticker onto the notebook cover, right over a muddy thumbprint from Nam. "Placeholders," she said, "for sketches you haven't made." On Turk Street, the fog tasted of diesel and seaweed, twin reminders that past and future could share a single breath. She walked east, guitar case knocking her calf. I headed north toward my rented room, rotor shadows pacing me along neon crosswalks. Dawn would deliver either a Volkswagen seat or another night beneath that spinning fan. I clenched the sketchbook, its fresh sticker glowing faintly under streetlight, unsure which path would echo louder. Behind me, Willow's lullaby drifted from the rooftop like a radio losing signal, its melody still tracing the arcs of invisible blades. I met the Volkswagen at dawn, its two-tone paint dulled by road dust and protest stickers. "Make bread, not war. Earth is mother." Willow waved from the passenger seat, guitar wedged between her knees, hair coiled beneath a bandana patterned with tiny suns. The driver, a bearded poet named Hawk, offered a thermos of burnt coffee while I squeezed onto a cushion fashioned from retired army ponchos. My sketchbook slid into a milk crate along with jars of peanut butter, candles, and a paperback Kerouac swollen by rain. The bus groaned west, tailpipe coughing blue, while the city receded under a veil of morning fog, thick as parade smoke. Highway 1 unfurled like ribbon candy along the cliffs, eucalyptus giving way to cypress, then to stark stone where land seemed to pause and contemplate the Pacific's vast animal breathing. Salt wind scoured the roof rack, rattling empty wine bottles that chimed like wind bells. Inside, someone strummed chords I didn't recognize, and Willow hummed a low drone that vibrated through the seat springs. Stay present, I reminded myself each time the engine backfired. Each pop a grenade echo, yet the ocean kept time with a slower, surer percussion. Waves colliding with rock in measured booms that promised no ambush. South of Santa Cruz, we stopped so Hawk could trade poems for gasoline at a half-deserted station. I sketched the pump's cracked dial, the attendant's mirrored shades reflecting our motley band, a kaleidoscope of paisley, denim, and my single olive jacket now blooming with blue daisies. When the tank filled, we rolled on, laughter threaded with occasional silence whenever the cliffs sharpened into drop-offs that yanked breath. The bus smelled of patchouli overlaying motor oil. Every so often, Willow caught my eye as if checking that I still breathed in 4/4 time with the engine's rhythm. Big Sur greeted us with late-afternoon fog caught on redwood crowns like cotton batting. We claimed a patch of beach where driftwood lay in bleached tangles, setting stones in a fire circle while gulls keened overhead. Willow gathered kindling. I sketched her crouched among the logs, skirts dusted in sand, the horizon igniting copper behind her. The first flame licked upward, releasing cedar scent that mixed with rolling kelp. Someone unpacked harmonicas and tambourines, another uncorked wine now warm as bathwater. We ringed the fire, knees touching, and passed the bottle while the sun melted into the ocean's steel edge. A crack of pine sap exploded in the flames, sharp enough to tilt the night. Suddenly the bonfire's sparks became tracer arcs, the surf's roar morphed into incoming mortar thumps, and the wind carried the green smell of jungle rot instead of seaweed. My lungs seized. I was back on a shadowed trail near Quang Ngai, moonlight bouncing off wet leaves moments before the ambush. Echoes of gunfire rattled my ribs. I felt the slap of mud as I crawled, heard Doc Landers shouting for morphine, tasted cordite tang thick as blood. A log collapsed in the fire, embers shooting skyward, and I flinched so hard the wine sloshed. Willow's hand found my forearm. Her thumb pressed steady circles until noise receded and night reclaimed its Californian stars. Enough. The word pulsed behind my eyes like a flare slowly dimming. I breathed through the tremor, counting waves until palms unclenched. Conversation around the fire softened, enveloping me in its ragged kindness. Tales of garage gigs, recipes for mescaline tea, rumors of peace talks stalling again in Paris. Willow never removed her hand, merely shifted it to trace invisible frets on my skin as though tuning me back to key. When the wind settled, she passed me the sketchbook, nudging a stub of charcoal into my grip without speaking. The circle's chatter receded. Crackle of fire and hush of surf provided metronome. Lines spilled easily in the flicker, bolder than usual, angled with purpose. I drew Willow standing inside a vortex of swirling petals, guitar slung across her back like a quiver of arrows. Her eyes, in charcoal, held both the softness of lullabies and the steel of Huey rotors. Wings curved from her shoulders, feathers shaped by sound waves rather than down. Around her feet I rendered tangled vines, jungle creeping toward her. But the vines smoldered into smoke before reaching the wings. When the last stroke fell, I exhaled a breath. I hadn't known I hoarded. I passed the page across the firelight. Willow studied the image, fingertips hovering over the warrior angel sketched in ash and beach sand grit. Glassiness rimmed her eyes, not quite tears. She folded the book closed with reverence, then leaned close so only flame could eavesdrop. "There's a reason my song matches the blades," she whispered, voice quavering like a string tuned just shy of pitch. "Tomorrow, on the cliffs, I need to tell you about my brother." The surf hammered the shore, moon climbing like a silver insignia pinned to the sky. I tasted salt on her breath, salt on mine, ocean, memory, or both, and sensed dawn already forming beyond the headland, bringing decisions no sketch could postpone. First light spilled across the Pacific in slow lavender sheets, tinting every wave crest the color of half-remembered violets. We climbed the headland path single file, still wrapped in bonfire smoke and dew, hands steadying guitars and coffee tins that served as mugs. Sea lions barked from unseen rocks below, their calls bouncing up the cliffs like questions. The Volkswagen rested back at camp, paint catching dawn like tarnished tin. Only the two of us continued upward, Willow leading, her skirt hem-brushing seaside heath that smelled of mint and salt. My boots found uneasy purchase on shale. Jungle mud had been softer, yet no path back there ever felt this precarious. At the cliff's crown, we stopped beside a lone Monterey cypress contorted into a permanent gesture of windward surrender. Willow set her guitar case on a flat stone, unclasped it reverently, and lifted out the instrument, spruce top glowing under the pastel sky. She did not strum. Instead, she turned toward the ocean. Inhale long. Exhale measured, as if sinking lungs to tide. When she finally spoke, her voice barely rose above the hush of distant breakers. "My brother, River, crossed here 2 years ago to Mexico," she said, knuckles whitening around a seashell pendant that hung at her throat. "He thought exile would spare him the uniform. I told him every river still meets an ocean called consequence." She paused, eyelids shuddering a memory's glare. Letters came, then stopped. Last one was stamped Nuevo Leon, no forwarding address. I watched gulls wheel against the brightening sky, understanding the weight of silence that can stretch across borders as surely as across minefields. Her next words slipped out on a thread of breath. "The lullaby I sang last night, he wrote it, scribbled on hotel stationery, asked me to finish." She plucked 2 open strings, letting them drone, and the melody unfurled in the cool air, spare and haunting. I felt its pulse align with the rotor cadence embedded in my marrow, the same 3-beat rise and fall that once signaled lifeline or ruin. Recognition rippled through me. Not surprise, but inevitability. A tune born of escape, echoing machinery born for pursuit. She turned, searching my face. I confessed what my silence last night had hidden. That helicopter blades still circled every attempt at sleep. That her lullaby mirrored them so closely my heart couldn't decide whether to run or rest. She nodded with soft, grim understanding. Maybe River heard them too, even miles from war, and wove comfort from the worst sound he knew. A sting pricked behind my eyes. I blinked toward the horizon where sunlight now bled orange through violet, bleeding exactly as flares once marked night extractions. I reached for the harmonica, metal cool and familiar, and let it answer her chords, matching minor to major, lifting then bending notes the way wind bends treetops before monsoon. The duet traveled outward over the cliff edge, meeting wind shear, scattering above kelp forests and gliding cormorants. Music bridged 2 missing men. One dodging, one returned, but never fully. You could almost believe the ocean received those notes and translated them into some universal truce. When the last phrase quivered into silence, Willow exhaled, cheeks bright with morning chill and something deeper. "Thank you," she whispered, fingers brushing mine, pulse steady despite the ache riding her gaze. We sat, backs against the cypress, watching sunlight climb the opposite ridge until even rock scars shone. She told me she would stay a few days, busk outside cafes for gas money, then head south in hopes of more news. Another letter, a rumor, any scrap proving her brother found a life unclaimed by draft boards or border patrols. I pictured her guitar case open on dusty streets, each coin dropped a tiny benediction. I could follow, thought the restless part of me, But the steadier half, the half molded by barbed wire perimeters and departure orders, knew my path curved elsewhere. San Francisco still held my sketches, my timid plans for art school on the GI Bill, and maybe if I kept drawing, I could tether nightmares to paper instead of pulse. She rose first, smoothing her skirt, and tucked a single white feather beneath the harmonica's strap. "For practice," she said, smile small yet intrepid. I slipped the instrument into my pocket. The feather brushed my wrist like a silent promise that sound could always outrun memory. Together we descended the cliff, gravel crunching underfoot, and at the split in the path she veered left toward Highway 1, while I followed the track leading inland through sunlit chaparral, bursting with lupine. We paused once, distance of 10 paces between us, raised hands in farewell without words. The ocean's percussion sufficed. Morning traffic hummed beyond the next rise, mingling with a tremolo of distant fenders from a campsite radio. I listened, waiting for the inevitable phantom chop of rotor blades, but heard only wind and the dying echo of our duet. Still, as I continued walking, I felt the old cadence stirring at the edge of thought. I pressed the harmonica to my lips, blew a soft counternote, and the sound soaked the memory before it could roar. Her guitar faded behind me, but its chords still drowned the whir of the blades.